My name's Tom Perry, and on behalf of the Great Wine Capitals Global Network, I'd like to welcome you to this webinar. The topic we're going to discuss today is how we in the network are dealing with the disruption caused by the pandemic and how we're safely opening our wineries and regions to welcome back guests. I'd like to welcome 4 distinguished members of the Great Wine Capitals, representing different perspectives in the industry. First of all, Elmarie Rabi, the General Manager of the Stellenbosch wine route from South Africa. Elmarie, hello. Marina Grijalba, co-founder and CEO of Rioja Trek, an incoming travel agency and specialized wine tourism company in Rioja. Welcome, Marina.
Hello, good afternoon.
Maria Lorena Cheparo, Site Events and Wine Communication Manager at the Chandon Winery in Argentina. Lorena, hello, welcome.
Hi, how are you? Hello.
And George Blankensee, the Estate Director of the Montelina Estate in the Napa Valley in the USA. Morning, George.
Hey.
The idea behind this webinar was an initiative by the Internal Communications Committee of the Great Wine Capitals, capably led by Carolina Suarez from Pro Mendoza in Argentina. Before we begin, a few words about the structure of the webinar to help you understand how it's going to work. First of all, I'm going to ask each member of the panel a specific question about their region and company, followed by some general questions that the speakers can address in turn if they so wish. It'll be kind of a roundtable discussion. At the end of the discussion, there'll be a question and answer session. You're welcome to submit a question to the panel at any time using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. If a question is especially pertinent to the topic discussed by an individual speaker, we'll address it during the discussion. Other questions will be answered following the panel discussion. So with that in mind, let's begin. I'd first of all like to talk to Elmarie for a second. We're sorry to hear about the fires that have destroyed part of Cape Town's Table Mountain starting 2 or 3 days ago. Would you care to comment on the situation?
Yeah, thank you very much, and thank you for those concern. Obviously, fire season now in the summertime is traumatic, and we in Stellenbosch fought also a terrible fire a couple of months ago. But in Cape Town, everything seems to be under control. They're still busy mopping up the scenes. But yes, unfortunately, terrible destructions of buildings, especially in the University of Cape Town campus. About 4,000 students were displaced. But as usual, our communities are tremendous. A company called Gift of the Givers immediately stepped in. They started feeding 4,000 people 3 times a day. Communities rallied together with donations and support to firefighters. So as always, it's an immense effort by communities in standing together. So it's something that we can really be proud of. But yeah, we're looking onwards and upwards.
Well, I imagine you're beginning the harvest or in the middle of the harvest. I'm not quite sure. Has there been damage to the vineyards or damage to any of the wineries that are closest to the city?
No, we're actually finished with harvest. So that's completely done now here in the Cape Winelands and Cape Town. And no vineyards close to that fire. The one we had in Stellenbosch about a month and a half, 6 weeks ago, actually scorched some of the vineyards, and we're still looking to see if there were a lot of smoke damage. But yeah, so we're actually fine. And this time around, except for destruction in the university and a few other buildings, I think it's just the natural fauna that burnt down.
Okay, well, thank you. Moving on to the more specific topic, South Africa has enacted 2 total alcohol sales bans. The government, as you very well know, has basically, well, twice has shut down the sale of alcohol. How have your members carried out their wine tourism strategy under these circumstances?
I must say I'm so proud to say that most of them have come through this really really grabbing onto or adapting on social media, really connecting with their followers and guests and visitors, and starting online tastings, regular communication sessions with their followers. Us as a wine route immediately realized that we had to get ready and move very quickly. So we came up with a set of health and safety protocols. We were the first destination in sub-Saharan Africa to get the WTTC safe travel stamp. So we could immediately put those kind of things in place to ensure people that we are doing everything in our power to make sure that they are safe and healthy, whoever comes here, whether it's international travelers or locals. Obviously, I think our country borders were closed for 6 to 8 weeks, so no internationals. But yes, just in general, pivoting very quickly, adjusting their direct-to-consumer platforms, and really starting to speak to those audiences. We haven't lost one member. I think people are struggling. We've got some uncontracted wine. It's hard, but and it will take some time to get rid of the accumulated surpluses. But I think in general, we are a dynamic and a dynamic community of wine farms. So it's the region and the wine farms.
So we'll all have to look out for South African wine in our local shops and make some extra purchases.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think a lot of our members have also reached out to their international distributors and agents, and they've set up amazing networks to distribute direct to consumers. So yes, watch out, we are coming.
Well, best of luck with that.
Thank you.
Moving on to Marina, the question I have for you is, Rioja has the Rioja region has at various times ordered severe regional lockdowns that have even forbidden travel between the 3 provinces that make up the wine district. How has Rioja Trek evolved its wine tourism strategy under this straitjacket condition?
Well, the jacket has been so straight that in some of the several lockdowns we've gone through, the only possibility we had was to stop, to do a parenthesis in our services, because there were even local lockdowns, and nobody could move from one town to the other. But well, when the provinces started to open up, things started to get better, and especially Spanish tourism is the one we've been having in the last 13 months, especially international tourism. We all know that they are usually the ones willing to pay extra for a special experience, to have a private guide and so on. But we also have an experience which adapts very good to Spanish tourism, to families, to groups of friends who haven't met for a long time, which is Great Grower for a Day. And that one is also an open air experience. So that one was working quite good in the moment in which provinces were open, which is not now. It will not be in a few weeks at least. Yeah. And wineries, generally speaking, in Rioja, they have adapted in different ways. One of them was Tom, that you live in Rioja, that wineries in Rioja are very proud of showing their facilities to everyone. And they show barrel cellar, fermentation process, and they do a full explanation. That was not economically feasible because the wineries had to optimize the efficiency of their staff. And doing a 1-hour tour for 6 people, which is what we are allowed at the moment, was just not possible. So they have adapted the length of the tours, and they have focused on the tastings, on the restaurants, the ones who have which have restaurants, but mainly the tastings. And on the other hand, there have been some other wineries which have started offering private experiences. Some of them were only doing private experiences already, and they have stopped charging extra for these private experiences. And some others, they just increase the prices. So, well, we'll be talking about this during this webinar, I think.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Just one housekeeping announcement. If any of the speakers could raise the volume of their mic, it would help. Apparently, there's been a little bit of a problem with people being able to hear. So I'd appreciate that if possible. Okay, next question is for Lorena from Mendoza. I read your website. As everything in the LVMH portfolio, it's fantastic and very, very comprehensive. I noticed that you have a bistro in the winery. How have you changed your visitor strategy with respect to numbers and menus? And what about shared dishes? Is it business as usual? Tell us about how you've changed during this crisis.
There's well, we had to adapt in many ways. First of all, there were once the government allowed opening restaurants, it was with 50% of the capacity allowed, and with lots of protocols regarding the distancing between the tables and the chairs, and of course the use of masks and lots of other things. So first of all, the capacity was reduced to half, and then it was increased when we could start putting tables in the garden. Another important adaptation we had to do is considering we had for a long time only people from Mendoza, local people.
Right.
So we totally changed the proposal of the bistro. The bistro has a very small capacity, so we used to have a quite expensive, like 4 or 5 course menu, which used to be a fixed menu, all paired with different sparkling wines. So we redesigned our menu to be able to offer like a really nice experience, but at a more competitive price, so that people from Mendoza could actually come to the winery. And it works very good, actually. And we had, especially for weekends, etc. And so this is the main ways in which we adapted. So the menu, then the distances and the capacity, and the use of the outdoor facilities or the gardens to have more people. Then regarding shared dishes, if it's, there used to be events mostly where you would go like with different foods and different people would pick things from there. That was totally, of course, forbidden. Therefore, we had to change for some of these little events at the beginning, and maybe serve the same kind of finger food, but in individual portions, for example, which was a way of solving the problem. And then when it's about something you share with somebody on your table, there's no regulations on that. For example, we serve what we call picada, which is like a plate
tapas.
with assorted tapas or assorted cold meats and cheese and breads. And if you're going with your couple or with, there's a maximum of 6 people per table here, then you could actually share that with the people on your table, not in bigger events sharing with other people you don't know. There's no many more regulations on sharing dishes than these that I mentioned.
I've heard that some wineries, some organizations have moved to disposable glassware, disposable knives, forks, spoons, and so on. Has that been your strategy, or have you just done some really extra special, extra hot sterilization?
I would never do that. No. It's really terrible. But it's also horrible. I mean, if you want to offer something of a really nice quality, it's very hard to do it with disposable things. We need to do a lot of extra work regarding how we handle all the materials we use for the service. This is very much regulated in many different protocols we have here, but it has worked perfectly. We have the dishwashers, which are with high temperature, so there's no doubt about the disinfection of all these materials. The staff is very well trained. The use of masks, of course. They never recommended the use of gloves, for example, because for this kind of tasks, it gives like a fake sensation of security. So people would perhaps touch things which, let's consider, might have the COVID-19, and then you will touch your something. So just staff are well trained to handle these things and drop them at the right place. And then permanent hand washing and sanitizing. Other things like, for example, having alcohol in all the tables, and then some specific controls at the entrance of the winery. For example, we have like a tunnel for disinfection with the diluted alcohol to disinfect the clothes and the shoes. Mm-hmm. Then we control temperature of the people that enter the facility.
Okay.
And then we also offer sanitizer for the hands. It's like a standard procedure when you enter. And then all the other measures that I mentioned inside the restaurant.
Dude, I know Marina can sympathize with me because we both live in Rioja. When you see people go to restaurants or bars here, you'll see the people walking in with a mask, taking a sip of wine, taking the mask off, putting the mask back on. It's probably the same situation in all of your countries, I'm sure.
It's the regulation says that you can remove your mask while you are sitting, like having your lunch or your glass of wine for the tasting, and then all the rest of the time you need to wear the mask. But normally people, while they are on the table, they remove the mask, they have their lunch, and they only put it back when they are going to the toilet or going out. But they remain like that little while without the mask. And at the tasting, it's a bit of the same.
I suspect that it's the same everywhere.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Well, thanks. George, I also read your website. Fantastic. I was amazed that you offer your guests so many different tasting experiences. Going from the basic, Monolina range to an ultra luxury curated tasting. 2 questions. You mentioned the other day that the estate makes visitors sign a waiver. Could you explain what that is and how it works?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Offering a variety certainly will increase everybody's desires of what they want to do. And for our intent, we used to be open to the public, and now everybody is by appointment. So for us to maximize everybody in the space that we're allowed to do, we're trying to offer them the variety. And I'll talk a little bit more about the high-end experiences, probably another question. But the waivers actually have done, at the beginning when this whole pandemic started, everybody had massive amount of protocols. And as the government continues to tell us what we can and can't do, and we've all changed and pivoted so many different directions in terms of the rules and distancing and masking and double masking and sanitation and having options. So what we've done is we've asked guests to sign waivers, and we ask them to sign for everybody attending, not just the person who booked it. So basically, if you have a party of 6, we get everybody's name and email, and they acknowledge again that they're going to be here and wear a mask and do all the proper things when required. What we also have done, therefore, is use that to increase our database and mailing list. And that's been our biggest increase right now. Of course, we let them opt out if they don't want to hear from us, but the majority want to hear from us. And so now, when we used to have a lot of volume of people here just to come organically, we've now increased our database doublefold, and their buying power has really what's kept us afloat on the e-commerce side of things.
Okay. Well, I was going to ask you about your guest spending habits and how they've evolved, but I think we can save that for the general discussion.
Sure.
Offering so many different tasting experiences, I'm sure things have pivoted a little bit one way or another. I'd kind of like to go on to the roundtable discussion right now, unless there are some questions from the audience. Okay. I'd like to start.
Yeah,
Yes,
just we had some comments from Italy where people explained that you can take the mask off for the whole moment of the tasting, as long as you stay at your place. That's it.
okay, I think Sylvia Bonomo has a question.
So how we do it is we
Okay.
do everything on a site called SellerPass here that manages our reservations. And when we send a confirmation, we actually send a PDF file that has sort of the disclaimers again about when they arrive here, the do's and don'ts. And then if they want to sign that in advance, it'll save time for their check-in process. If they don't, then they have to step to the side. We ask them to come 5 minutes, 10 minutes before their appointment time to sign that. So they can either submit it to us back online and send it to us, or they submit it to us in person when they get here. And if they don't have it, then we give them the sheet and they have to fill that out before they start their tasting.
Very, very thorough indeed. All right, well, I'd like to move on to the second part of the webinar, and I'm going to start with the $64,000 question. For those of you who are familiar with this, it's the big question as far as I'm concerned. The experts say that SARS-CoV-2 is here to stay, perhaps not on the same level as it is now, but that it'll somehow be with us, and that we'll probably need booster shots and so on to keep our immunity high. Have you all thought about what permanent measures you'll keep in place once we return to the new normal? You have a whole bunch of different protocols. I read the Stellenbosch protocol, and I don't think there's anything they left out. Congratulations. Will all of this just go away, in your opinion? Will we go back to business as usual? What are your feelings about what you want to keep, things that you've learned during the pandemic, and what parts of the protocol you'd like to keep? I won't say once this is all over, but once things have quieted down a little bit. Anybody want to pipe in,
Yeah.
Marina?
Yeah, I would like to say that. Can you hear me okay, by the way?
I can, yes, yeah.
All right. So there are several things that have improved because of COVID, or that have gone faster than we thought, as maybe, for example, payment online. That was something that some people were doing, but it has become a fact because of COVID. The use of hydrogel and the cleaning facilities and all these things are very positive. But there are certain things that I believe we should forget about as fast as we can, as for example, the social distance. We Spaniards are very social, and we like to be in contact with people. And even if you don't know the rest of people who are joining you in a visit, if you're in a 3 or 4 hour tour, at the end of the tour, in the tasting, you start a conversation, and that's part of the great things you have with wine tourism, that you get to know people with the same feeling, with the same passion for wine. And that's something that we have lost now, because you have the distance, you have one table for each family, for each group of friends, and it's quite sad to see it. I'm very happy to forget about that.
Okay. So
I would also like to add, I think and I think the use of masks is something that everybody is expecting to be able to get rid of. It's not only that it's uncomfortable, but it also, I think it doesn't give us the chance to show the smile and the facial expression of people. So at the beginning, when tour guides had to start like giving a tour, I mean, you can see the eye expression, but I think the masks are terrible from that perspective. So that's one thing I hope that we will be able to remove as soon as it's allowed. And what we have to keep of the protocols that we have incorporated, I think lots of things regarding different ways of cleaning, or different readings of different products. I think that's something we can keep, and it's a positive, not only for COVID, but for any, for health safety, for any other diseases. But masks, I hope that will go away soon.
Well,
I would just add briefly that everybody here, I'm sure, like in your countries, is starving to get back to the normal, and we're so tired of this, and we understand the need for it. But this country is pretty divided in what you should do and what you shouldn't do. And so I think having a hand sanitizer at each station is probably a good practice to have in general. But once the government and the locals say that we don't have to do certain things, we're not going to do it. So everybody really wants to get back to normal.
Yes, I can agree with that. But unfortunately, our government has been very sneaky, and they've actually written it into law now, not with an end date. So we don't know how long they're going to force us to do these things. But I think for us, there's three things, and that's the physical distancing, mask wearing, and sanitizing. That is sort of and I think that's probably the thing that everybody does. We had an event here a week ago where we could have outside events of 500 people or more, and it was such a struggle just to keep people to keep their masks on when they were not tasting wine or drinking. But yes, unfortunately, I think it's here to stay for now, and if you're going to be moving around, you need to wear a mask. It's not nice. That's why I stay inside and out of shops.
There's a question here. I'm looking at the chat. A question was, don't you think that the fear of people being close to one another will stay longer? You think people are a little bit hesitant about getting up close? I know the Riojans will jump right in as close as possible, but what about the rest of you?
Most of those will probably stay home, is my guess. If you're coming here, you're expecting for that intimacy and that connection.
Yeah, so that's also the trend in South Africa. Stellenbosch is obviously a student town, so there's less concern amongst that community. But at this stage, our statistics are good. Our recovery rate sits at 95%. So I think that provides like a false positive or a false surety. But definitely there's a large component of people, visitors, guests to wine farms and to the region itself that is still too scared to move around. They stay at home, they engage online, they order in, get their stuff delivered. So there's still a very much large portion of that. Okay.
There's another question here that I think we can address during this part of the conversation. Online wine sales. Just to give you an example, in where Marina and I live, Rioja wine is very, very heavily skewed toward the restaurant trade, bars and restaurants. Sales to bars and restaurants, obviously, at the beginning of the pandemic, dried up completely. And consequently, this has gotten direct winery to consumer sales at a very, very high level. My question is, do you think this tendency or this trend for people to buy direct from wineries is here to stay? I know in the United States, there may be a problem with the 3-tier system. George could perhaps address that. How about, let's start with George. How about Montalina direct to consumer? Is that increasing for you? Do you have any legal hassles?
The ABC, at least within the state, and probably with a lot of the other states, are starting to ease up. They're doing things that we couldn't do. I mean, some restaurants were allowed to offer mixed cocktails to go, and so they've kind of softened their stance to try and help businesses. So that's been a positive. But yes, to answer your question, we absolutely have. It's just been a different mix of how we get there. So tasting room, of course, is what suffered the most. So the in-person tasting room, it just, when we shut down for several months, and then you have the limitations of what we can and can't do. It's just really just stalled that process. But then, like I'm sure all of you have, we've morphed into virtuals, and, Zoom has been a godsend. So we've learned to partner with other vendors and vendors that suffer through this pandemic, distributors, vendors that produce lobster, that, are lobster fishermen that can't sell to restaurants anymore. And so we partner with them to do some creative things. It just kind of helps them out, and it gets people engaged with us. So, if they can't get here and get engaged, we engage with them online. E-commerce has obviously exploded, I'm sure, for everybody. We know they're buying off-premise and retail, and so we can provide that as well. Our telesales are also exploding. People are more receptive for our calls. Through pandemics, what's the one thing people want to do is still drink. So we continue to,
right.
we continue to increase that. And I think it's here to stay. I think that we can have the best of both. I think those will be around, but we still want people to be here, because there's the best marketing for our brand is exposure when you come here personally and see it.
Certainly. Thanks, George. I see that there's a raised hand. So Catherine, would you like to?
We have a question on the chat from Ignacio for Marina. You said it was difficult nowadays to have a profitable business with only wine tourism. Do you have an idea for a typical winery? How many people should come so that it becomes profitable again?
Well, as you will surely know, the Rioja wine growing region is divided into 3 different parts, politically speaking. So we've got La Rioja, Basque Country, and Navarra. And that means that, La Rioja is a single province, and there are, several hundred wineries in La Rioja. So everyone has a family member or a friend who has a winery. So it is difficult to go on wine tourism in La Rioja because most of the people know wineries themselves. Yeah? Even like that, some wineries have made nice numbers during Easter. They have had terraces where they were able to offer their wines and so on. But it is just surviving till real tourism comes back. Yeah? What we have seen is that the Basque Country, which is divided into 3 different provinces itself, and 2 of them don't have any Rioja winemaking themselves. Well, they have moved a lot in the moment they were able to, of course. Now it's not allowed anymore, but they have moved to the Rioja Alavesa area, and that has given great happiness to the wineries that are located there. Yeah? Real tourism, to me, I think will come back in September, October. I want to be positive about that. International or European tourism. Well, for example, I have had a reservation this morning for November, but there are already things for October. I don't think the summer is going to be easy, at least for this type of high-end tourism. Yeah? But for sure, Spaniards will go back to wineries in the summer, within friends, within people people they know, and I think I want to be positive about this, and I think by the autumn it will be there. Yeah.
Okay. Lorena, you said you wanted to talk about the direct-to-consumer situation in Argentina.
Yeah, I think it was for Argentina was very interesting because what we see as so normal in the US, for example, with the wine clubs and all these direct sales to consumer from the wineries, it's not the case in Argentina, or it was not before the pandemic. So one of the things that actually helped many wineries survive a little bit when they closed their tourism area was precisely the direct to consumer sales. So many small wineries and not so small, they created their own direct to consumer sales online. Not that much with the format of the wine club as we know it in the US, but mostly like digital stores or yeah, basically like that. In our case, for example, we created like a store in Mercado Libre, which is some kind of like an Amazon or something like that, but from Argentina and Latin America. And many wineries actually worked very well and did their sales very well through the online. I think this was a big push to online sales in Argentina, and I believe this will stay like this.
Okay. Elmarie, any comments about that?
No, I think, as I said also in the beginning, we very quickly pivoted to online presence, to engage virtually. I think that is definitely here to stay for us as a long distance destination. I mean, 11-hour flight to get to Europe. We've now seen with the Zoom and various other platforms how easy it is to engage with your customers and agents across the world. So I think that will definitely influence the way that we do business from here forward. Obviously, we all are looking for this one-to-one engagement, to go and visit a farm, load your car, boot full of wine, drive away from there. But that has definitely changed. I think online is here to stay, and also online tastings, online events, various other things are definitely here to stay. It's made a big impact on the way we do business.
Okay. There's a question here that I don't really know if it's, absolutely pertinent, but since all of us somehow are involved in selling, a question was, do you think it's worth it for a small single winery to concentrate on e-commerce, or is it better to join big chains? Well, I understand that to mean look for distributors, sell to supermarkets and so on. Would anybody like to take a shot at that? It's on the chat. Do you think it's worth it for a small single winery to open an e-commerce, or is it better to join big chains?
Absolutely, completely worth it. Yeah, if you can handle that, of course, it's you're not going through a second party to do this. I don't know within which country and what you're allowed to do, so I could only speak on behalf of us. But if we have the capability, then absolutely, I think it's a no-brainer.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. Probably the U.S. is the most restricted of the markets. Here, anything goes, basically, and everything does go. It can be a little chaotic, the different paths to the end consumer. I certainly agree that a very, very small winery, it might make sense for them to concentrate on that rather than investing a lot in working with distributors. Okay, let's see here. There are a ton of questions here. Let's see. Okay, I think we've got everything. All right, another question that I prepared in advance. If you've had to reduce the maximum number of visitors in a group, and I'm saying before, you would go to a winery and they would form a group of, say, 10 or 12 people, who spoke English, another group of 10 or 12 people who spoke French, et cetera, and take this rather large group through the winery as one of the programs. If you've all had to reduce the maximum number of visitors in a group to 4 or to 6, because of the restrictions due to the pandemic, first of all, has that caused you to change the focus of your programs? Are people more receptive to the shall we say more personal touch of a smaller group, smaller group that could be focused on something particular? And if so, in what way? I would like to ask George first, because your programs are so big. Do you think?
Yeah, I think I answered some of this, and some of the chat people have been asking. You know, we offer a variety of options. Normally, when we have it open to the public, you know, we can do 300 to 500 people on a given day. But you know, some people, you know, are comfortable with that. Some aren't. But you know, we offer the variety to the $250 experience to, you know, a $40 experience. Having to go appointment only. We used to offer shared tastings when people come in. I had a responsibility. If they have a designated driver, they can actually share a glass. Well, of course, that's all out the window. So we are pre-charging as well. Since it's appointment only, we ask that guests prepay, you know, because the no-shows become a big factor, and we turn away other bookings because of these folks. And so our tasting room fees have increased exponentially. And so part of the question became, one of the things was, are people spending more or less? I think they're spending less right now, but at the same time, you know, if they didn't buy one of our state cabs, they actually are buying it because they're paying $250 a person. And so when you take $500 for 2 people, we just sold basically close to 3 bottles of our state cab. So in some ways, they are buying our bottles. It's just a different way of how we're getting that sale.
Okay. El Marie, I know you have a lot of different wineries in the wine route. Have you noticed that they're changing their programs and to adapt to smaller groups? And if your gut feeling is that this might be a better way forward?
Yes, so I would like to say in general, so we don't do a lot of sort of cellar tours, walking tours through the wineries. When people arrive at a wine farm, they sit down at a table, and that can be anything. It's usually just by the group that came in. It's not big share tastings. And I've just spoken to some of our members today, and they are actually putting more infrastructure in place to still cope with the same amount of people, but over a larger space. So for example, more tasting stations, more picnic pods, more opportunities, like moving into the big barrel cellars to create smaller stations, but still work with the same number of people. And obviously within our regulations and within the numbers that we are allowed to see on a daily basis. But so that's the one thing. And then also obviously booking slots, that's a big thing. But we are quite fortunate here that we've got, most places they've got large outside areas, and now it's autumn going into winter, but we've got actually fantastic weather until about May, June, before we go into winter. And so you can still use the outside spaces. And I said barrel cellars are converted to tasting rooms. Space are included, or space are increased, a lot of space with the distancing, and but more smaller pods and tasting stations.
Okay. Lorena, would you like to comment on the situation at Chandon?
Yes, we certainly need to try to be able to accommodate all the demand that we have, because we need it from every perspective. There are 2 different situations. One situation is what we can do regarding groups and prices when we still have only local people or only Argentinian people, because remember that besides the pandemic, we have an economic crisis. So it wouldn't work like raising the prices to be able to gain as much money with fewer people, because that wouldn't work for the local people. When we have international public, probably people are more willing to pay more for some more exclusive experiences. So for now, what we have done is, like, for example, to recruit more on-call staff that we need to train and everything to be able to offer more tours with fewer people, and then of course use alternative spaces for the tastings. Remember that in Argentina in general, when you visit a winery, you book a tour plus a tasting. It's not, most people, they don't just drop by and have a glass of wine. Most people do a tour and the tasting. So actually you have to have a lot of staff to bring 6 people or 10 people every time in the tour, which is about an hour, and then the tasting. So this is what we have done. We have increased like the number of tours, and we still have like our offer of fantastic extra quality experiences like vertical tastings or blind tastings or other kind of experiences. But as far as we have only local people, we will sell very few of those, and we will mostly sell the regular tour. So it's mostly more tours with fewer people at same rates, unfortunately.
Are your consumers happy with what they're getting? This is a general question. I mean, does the personal touch
Very much.
Does the personal touch work? I know
Here
it's a facetious question. You know, you all know the answer, but I'd just like to hear you say it.
We have great comments on the experiences, and since we have had a lot of people from Argentina who had never visited wineries before, because a lot of public which used to perhaps take their vacations abroad, they decided to travel through Argentina. So we are having a lot of public which in other moments would have gone abroad, and they have come here, so they are surprised. And we have really nice ratings and comments on TripAdvisor, on Google, and it's really great for Chandona and also for Terrazas de los Andes, which is the other winery I manage.
Okay, George.
I would say it's a mixed bag for us, to be fully honest.
Okay.
Because again, people come here, and a lot of people who are repeats remember what they've gotten, and now they come here and there's a big plexiglass shield in front of them and the tasting. You know, you got to sign these waivers. We got to, you know, we have some plastic tablecloths in some of the areas that you can easily sanitize and turn. You know, they have memory and they want to come back and experience that. And the world is different, you know, and it's hard to tell them. It's like, you know, I hate waiting in line at a grocery store and all the different things that we all have to adapt to. But that is the reality, but they're still not happy about it. So I'd say it's a mixed bag. You know, we're doing what we can, you know, and the majority of them do understand that. But I would say the vocal minority are quite vocal about it.
Yeah, I think that people are very, very happy and willing to have an experience, to go out. And anything you do is really appreciated by customers. So even if you go to a terrace and you have a glass of wine that you may already know, but you're having a glass of wine in an outdoor terrace with your couple, and that makes it the best experience. People's mind is now different, and I think that's positive also.
Okay. Another question I have for George. I'm really not too sure about how severe the lockdown was. And it goes to my question about increased marketing to the locals. And when I say the locals, I mean the people who live in, you know, in the Napa Valley itself.
Yeah.
Were San Franciscans allowed to go to Napa during or?
Yeah, you know, it was strange. I mean, I heard about in Spain how they were they're very tight. They actually had some towns, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you couldn't even cross into other towns. And, you know, and here we are divided by counties, and counties are rated according to their increase in cases or hospitalizations. And so some counties were more strict in their lockdowns where others didn't have it. But the challenge was those people who were in the lockdown counties just came to the other ones. So yeah, we did have an increase of visitors from mostly the San Francisco Bay Area. People were still reluctant to get on planes back during the height of this. So when we were able to operate, it was mostly locals, not so much Napa within the Valley, but certainly within the Bay Area there. And, you know, that's always been sort of our mainstay is the local one-day drive-in traffic.
Alrighty. Question for Lorena. Mendoza, I think it's a place that has attracted a lot of international tourists. I mean, you have the Andes Mountains right there. You know, you have all kinds of things to do. And the fact that the international tourism dried up, I understand that the Chileans couldn't even visit you. How has the region marketed itself to local wine tourism? I mean, you seem to, you know, I'm not trying to brag, but I've been to Mendoza several times, and you see many more foreigners than you do Argentinians.
Yes.
What have you done to to get the locals to the wineries?
Well, it's been a challenge.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's been quite a challenge. Mendoza has many attractions. I mean, from climbers to adventure to rafting, and all of these combines very well with the wine tourism. And there's a lot of nice infrastructure. And actually, we were very much used to have these international visitors. Like I had more than 60% of international visitors at both wineries, and all of the sudden it was totally cut, and we had to start trying to attract people from Mendoza, not even from Argentina, for many months.
Mhm.
So first of all, we did all these adaptations I talked before, especially in the restaurants, which is like the first activity that could actually start working with locals, because people from Mendoza, mostly they know the winery, so it's not that they will come and pay for a tour and tasting. They will come and pay for lunch, for a gastronomy experience. So what we did was, first of all, this, and we started doing a lot of communication. I mean, we adapted, for example, the menus, and then we started communicating a lot. Lots of social media, that was key. Facebook, Instagram, so you could easily see like all wineries promoting different experiences through social media. So a special, come and see our new menu, special prices for Mendocinian people. And there was a lot of communication, a lot of WhatsApp communication. I'm not sure how WhatsApp works in all countries, but here it's full of WhatsApp groups of different kind of people. So through WhatsApp, everywhere, I mean, you receive like little flyers from winery restaurants. Then another trend, which was really beautiful, and I think it will stay, it was the trend of the sunsets at the wineries. Most wineries have like beautiful views of the Andes and the vineyards. So one trendy thing was to come and enjoy a sunset at our winery. So probably it was going to be like a glass of wine, some nice music, a DJ, and people would go there. So all kinds of communication, a lot of local communication with interviews in radios, for example, that people listen when they're going to work. So you talk about the experiences there. So I think communication was a key. And then the second key was to create experiences and events that would be attractive for local public. During this time, lots of people who had never visited a winery, people from Mendoza, they visited wineries just to go for lunch, dinner, sunset, or an event. Once it was a bit more open, one fantastic thing was the outdoor events. First of all, some outdoor activities combined with the wines and the food, like yoga. We did lots of that. We had like a fixed yoga class in the gardens of terrazas every Saturday morning, and people would enjoy the class and then a nice brunch, for example, with a glass of wine. And that worked very well. Then some specific yoga events for a few more people, as it was allowed by the government, again in the gardens. And then there's a lot of events which the government promotes and that happen in many wineries, like for example, concerts of classical music, or the celebration of the Vendimia Festival, which would normally be like a huge event in one particular place. It was split like in many small events in different wineries,
right,
outdoors, and it was really a fantastic experience. So I think events and a lot of communication, create new things which will attract the attention of local customers. That was, and then the same thing, but with a scope to all the country. So from January to this point, to the Holy Week and Easter, all this period of time, we had really a lot of people coming to Mendoza, also from the rest of Argentina. And I think that was very attractive for them.
okay. Two questions. I don't know, did any of you ever hear of or do a virtual tasting or a virtual visit to the winery before March of last year?
No.
So here we had sort of more cellar visits, cellar tours, like a walk through the barrel cellar with a winemaker talking, but to a not as big an extent as it is now. Now it's everyday occurrence where before there were a much lesser degree of this, but definitely sort of drone shots of hiking trails, running trails. We've got what we call Vineyard Safaris here. So on an open safari viewing vehicle, you would have a tour around the vineyards, taste somewhere in the middle of the vineyard. So there were some footage of that around, and that was available to see. Now it is almost everybody has got something virtual all the time.
Okay, it certainly made us all a lot more agile, if you know what I mean. It's
Definitely.
opened up the new technologies have opened up a lot of possibilities.
Absolutely.
Virtual wine tastings is something that I find very interesting because of the logistics. You've got a winemaker trying to explain the wines to people who, maybe 6,000 miles away in a different time zone, hopefully with the same wines. I guess it's not the ideal solution, but it's one way to keep your winery and your brands front of mind for consumers. Okay, let's see. Another question, how about the next step when international visitors return? Is everybody going to adapt again? Will we go back to the old way of dealing with people, of advertising, of promotion? What are your thoughts about when to promote the international markets again? Is it too early?
So just, sorry. We were getting ready to start advertising to the US market because they're resuming, well, we heard they were resuming flights to Johannesburg, direct flights, not via the United Arab Emirates. So, and then just today we got news that again South Africa has been put on the I think it's not the red list. I mean, we talk about red list in terms of traveling, but we are heavily restricted by all international or most international countries where people aren't when they travel to South Africa they get penalized. I must say that we do have a certain number of foreign visitors here. There's a lot of South Americans at the moment, some UK visitors, some we had a lot of Russians earlier. So it's not like it's completely just locals around. We've got some international visitors, but definitely, I mean, we are driven by what we call the mood in the room. So if the time is right, we are ready to go. We are always fully prepared to hit the green button, and as soon as opportunities open up, then we can just go for it. And this is also the one thing that we've been really that's kept us going, is that we are always fully prepared and we scale up and down as we need with regards to activations, with communications, with marketing, but we will definitely hit international marketing heavy when the time is right. I think when people can travel here without being penalized, without having to go into quarantine when they get back, we will definitely, go for it.
How do the rest of you feel, or will a shake of the head be enough?
I think that
I think every business, wineries, wine tours, restaurants, hotels, they have to show people that they are there. You have to stay there with social media, where you have to communicate with your future customers and with the customers that want to go back. But it may be still too early to show the best of your communication, meaning that maybe to hit with the best videos or the best offers you can have. It may be still too early. You may have to wait a few weeks. Yeah.
Okay.
I agree with that. Yes.
I would add just internationally, of course, I think Elmarie touched on it. Many countries are in a different situation than we just don't know what it is. We're ready, and the Napa Vineyards is our marketing arm that engages the international and domestic needs. We have a huge structure in the valley of hotels and restaurants, and we're all sort of dependent on each other. And without the hotels and guest rooms, we can't get the guests we need to get in here, and the restaurants as well, for them to have a place to eat. And when you combine all our efforts, we have a database mailing list of over 25,000 people, and you multiply that by 200, 300 wineries in the valley and the restaurants and hotels. That's powerful marketing, and we're all anxious to get people out there. So we're all hitting them when we can. Apart from the Napa Vintners that does a wonderful job in understanding our needs and trying to get out there, but each of us combined has a massive amount of marketing power.
Certainly, I couldn't agree more. I know El Marie's organization works very hard to promote, the Stellenbosch corner of the Western Cape, so to speak. The Rioja Regulatory Council does the same thing. Pro Mendoza does the same thing. So I think we're fortunate, all of us, that there's a marketing arm and an image arm to help us concentrate on our core business, which is, increasing awareness and sales of our brands. Well, I think we're coming to the point that I like to call webinar fatigue. I wanted to thank all of you for participating in the discussion. First of all, the panelists, thank you very much. I appreciate your lively responses. And of course, thank you very, very much to all of you who have attended kind of in the background for your questions and for signing up in the first place. So if everybody is happy, we can call it a morning or an afternoon. So how do you feel about that? Any other final comments?
All good. Thank you for letting us be a part of it.
Well, thank you once again. And well, I hope one day we can see each other personally again, shake hands, hug, as Marina would say, and get on the airplane again. So thank you very much. So
absolutely.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Hasta pronto.
Hasta pronto. Gracias.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Tot ziens. Tot ziens.
Tot ziens.